welcome to my channel. My name is Hannah and let's talk Henry James. So if you're a reader, you have probably heard of this author before. He lived from 1843 to 1916. I have a little note card here because I knew I was not going to remember on my own. He was 72 when he died, and he is considered like one of the greatest English language novelists like of our time. He wrote a ton of novels, novellas, short stories, essays, like all sorts of kinds of things. And so his stuff is considered classics today. He was actually even nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature 3 times in 1911, 1912, and 1916. One thing I thought was interesting about him is that his later works are actually compared to Impressionist paintings, which it's like, why are you comparing literature to painting? But I thought that was an interesting comparison, especially since Impressionism is one of my favorite art styles. And so I'm curious if I can kind of see that in his stories and see if I agree with that assessment. So he wrote The Turn of the Screw, which is what The Haunting of Bly Manor is based on, which is why it's actually the one story in this book I have already read. This is a story that is considered the most analyzed and ambiguous ghost story in English literature, which I did not know that. I definitely would not expect that one to be. I actually think The Haunting of Hill House probably would have been the most analyzed in my opinion, but I guess not. So I will be reading Ghost Stories of Henry James. These are supposed to be all of his ghost stories, and they are in chronological order, which I definitely appreciate. However, it didn't say the dates in here. I once again had to look them up. So there is an introduction in here by Martin Schofield, and he's from the University of Kent at Canterbury. And this book is actually set up kind of weird. Like, there's the introduction, which it actually tells me not to read until after reading the book, which I was kind of I'm always wary of that with introductions, and I'm really glad this one actually warned me, because I kind of skimmed through it and I'm like, I think I'm going to skip this. I think it's going to have spoilers. And then I saw that and it's like, okay, that makes sense now. But it has like a general introduction, an introduction which actually goes like quite a few pages, as you can see. And then there's a select bibliography, which only has a few of his writings in here. I don't even know why this is really included, but the categories are works by Henry James, biography, critical editions of The Turn of the Screw and of other ghost stories by Henry James, other criticism of James's ghost stories, related criticism of James's novels and stories, and then related work on the supernatural in fiction. So there's like quite a lot going on in here. And then we finally, oh wait, no, we don't even finally get to the stories, because then there's the author's preface to The Turn of the Screw, which is super freaking long. And then there's the author's preface to a bunch of the other stories. And I'm like, what the hell even is this? Like, I just want to read the story. I don't want a preface to it. And so then we finally get to where we have the stories. And at the end of the book, we then have notes to the prefaces. And it's just like, why? Like, see, literally, notes on the prefaces. I feel like that's a little extreme. And then we have notes to the stories, which I assume that's going to be more like footnotes or things that need to be explained a little bit more. But like, damn, so there's quite a lot going on in here. But the back of the book says, Henry James was arguably the greatest practitioner of what has been called the psychological ghost story. His stories explore the region which lies between the supernatural or straightforwardly marvelous and the darker areas of the human psyche. This edition includes all 10 of his apparitional stories, or ghost stories in the strict sense of the term, and as such is the fullest collection currently available. The stories range widely in tone and type. They include The Jolly Corner, a compelling story of psychological doubling, Owen Wingrave, which is also a subtle parable of military tradition, The Friends of the Friends, a strange story of uncanny love, and The Private Life, which finds a shrewd high comedy in its ghostly theme. The volume also includes James's great novella, The Turn of the Screw, perhaps the most ambiguous and disturbing ghost story ever written. Which I didn't realize until today when I was kind of like looking at the back of this, that The Turn of the Screw is actually included in here. And I read that back in 2019. Like I said, it's the basis for the show The Haunting of Bly Manor, and so that's why I read it. And I gave it a 2-star. So I wasn't exactly impressed with it. So I'm a bit worried going into this. I'm scared I'm not gonna like his style of writing, because I remember that it was a bit confusing, I think, when I read that one. I actually looked at my review. Apparently at the time I had been reading a lot of things where everything would be explained by like that person was going crazy, and in particular it being a woman. And so I think I was just a bit sick of that trope at that moment too, so that probably didn't help. So yeah, I'll obviously be skipping that story, and since I'm rating each story individually, I'll just apply the 2 to that, I suppose. But since these are in chronological order, the first one is actually, if I can find it. So the first story I'll be reading in here is The Romance of Certain Old Clothes, which I've actually heard of this story before. It is 17 pages long, and this was, I think these dates are going to be when they were published, not when they were written. And so this one was published in 1868. So as you can see, like, there really aren't many like paragraphs or anything like that. And the writing is quite small, so this looks very, very dense. So I feel like this is definitely going to take me a bit to get through. But the first sentence of this story is, towards the middle of the 18th century, there lived in the province of Massachusetts a widowed gentlewoman, the mother of 3 children. Yeah, I'm not sure reading the first sentence of these ones is going to be as effective as when I did the H.P. Lovecraft one. But from what I've read, it really seems like there is going to be a clear journey his writing takes from when he first started writing these earlier stories to the end. So I definitely should be able to see that evolution in his style. So even though I'm very, very apprehensive of getting into this, I hope it's gonna be at least an okay time. So let's get into it. Sorry it's getting a bit dark in here, but it's like 7:30, so our sun's out at like 8:30 now. But I have finished the first story. God, I almost said chapter. I could not think of the word story. And I'm gonna have to bring up the show The Haunting of Bly Manor again. This was on Netflix. It's by Mike Flanagan. I didn't say his name before because I couldn't think of it at the time. As I was reading this first story, I'm like, I have literally seen this story before. Like, what the hell? Like, it was really like tripping me out because I'm like, this is some very weird deja vu. And I was like, is it that show? Like, did they adapt this somehow in the show? And so I just Googled like Haunting of Bly Manor and the title of the story, and that's literally the title of episode 8 in that show. And so it all kind of came together, and it's like, oh, okay. Like, there were even several characters with the same names and everything. So yeah, the show is not only adapted from The Turn of the Screw, it's from a lot of other of his works too, because every episode... Can we stop being loud outside, please? Because every episode, the title is a Henry James short story name. So it just makes a lot more sense now. And so I feel like going into this further, there are going to be several more instances where I'm having like weird deja vu and is like, I've literally seen this before kind of deal. So on that note, story is 2 stars, unfortunately. Not a lot going on. There's literally nothing, absolutely nothing that has to do with ghosts until literally the last paragraph. So it was not even really like a lot of build up. There really was almost no tension at all. So it was just fine. Like, I mean, if it had been blown up into a larger story with more detail and stuff, it might have been more interesting. But I also feel like it's a story that I've heard a lot of times before besides the ending part. But that's most likely because of people taking inspiration from this rather than like the other way around. But pretty much this is about 2 sisters. Their brother comes back from college, brings a friend. They both kind of fall in love with him because they're kind of like, hey, this is like my ticket out of here kind of thing. He's completely different from like everyone else in the town kind of deal. And he ends up picking the older sister, and so the other one kind of holds a bit of a grudge there. And unfortunately, after the older sister has her first child, she passes away, and the sister kind of sees that as an opportunity to get into her brother-in-law's life, and it's a little weird. But yeah, it just really didn't have as much to do with ghosts as I really wanted, and I can see that it's getting darker and darker in here. So I'm gonna see if I can put this up and get a little bit more light. Ooh, wow, yeah, like that completely changed it. I can actually see my face now. Sorry about that. All right, so that's that story. His writing was okay. It was fine. I could follow it a lot easier than I thought I was going to be able to. Like, that could have been written today kind of thing. The next story I'll be reading was written in 1876, I believe. I keep flipping the years. I think it's 76 though. And it is called The Ghostly Rental, which I've also heard this is another one of his early works, and so it's not like the greatest kind of thing. This one is a bit longer at 29 pages, and the first sentence is, I was in my 22nd year and I had just left college. That's it. That's the first sentence. Well, doesn't sound very interesting either. But like I said before, like, this is a brick of a book. Like, look at that. Where are the paragraphs? Where are the paragraphs? And like, yeah, where are the paragraphs? Oh, I finally see some dialogue. But like, most of these pages are literally just that. So I feel like I'm going to very quickly not like this book very much. And knowing that this next story isn't supposed to be good either, like, I feel like this is just going to go into a downward spiral very quickly. Like, I really hope the one after is good, because I'm definitely going to need something to keep me invested in this. So here's to hoping, I guess. So I just read the second short story in here. I do feel like I procrastinated it a bit. I read literally nothing at all yesterday. I just feel like I'm just so like, I feel like this is going to be such a painful experience and that I'm not going to like a lot of the stories. However, I'm pleased to report that this one was better than the first. I am giving it 3 stars in the end. The beginning and the end were just not the greatest, but the middle part was definitely the best here. And also, this story was kind of on the humorous side. Definitely not like in-your-face humor or like someone actively making a joke kind of thing. Just the story itself is kind of funny. I did notice there were a lot of words, especially in the first 2 pages, that I straight up just did not know. You could pretty much infer their meaning from the sentence itself, but pronouncing them, like I was trying to say them in my head and I'm just like, what? Like, it took me several tries for each one. Like, there wasn't anything where I was like, oh, I need to look up this word to understand this sentence kind of thing. It was just words that I definitely have not seen before. So this story follows this seemingly very random guy. Like, he just kind of goes for walks every day. And one of the days he decides to try to take this shortcut down this street that doesn't look like it's traveled very often. And he sees just this lone, solitary house that looks like it's abandoned. And he pretty much looks at this house and is just like, this thing's fucking haunted, isn't it? And that like starts his obsession with this place, and he's just like so fueled by his curiosity. And pretty much throughout the story he learns more and more about this place, like who owns it, who lived there, what happened to them, what the current situation is kind of thing. And that leads him to encounter his own sort of ghost. So far in these first 2 stories, the actual like ghost aspect has been very, very minimal. I'm really hoping it ramps up in these next couple stories, because like I had said before, from reading reviews, the first 2 stories in here are considered like not great. So I'm hoping from here it definitely picks up. Henry James's writing style so far is fine. I do find myself where I'm reading but not exactly absorbing the information more often than I would like. But that might also just be because these aren't the best stories in general so far. One thing that did pop up in this story though is, since it's written literally in the 1800s, there are some words for people of different color that we would not use today at all. So I did encounter that a few times in here. It's not something that comes up often, but it's just like you read it and you're like, oh, kind of thing. So the next story is called Sir Edmund Orme, and this is 15 pages long. It was written, or published, I should say, in 1891, and the first sentence is, the statement appears to have been written, though the fragment is undated, long after the death of his wife, whom I take to have been one of the persons referred to. So none of these first sentences of these stories are very interesting. I feel like most of these are going to be ones where it really has to like ramp up into it. It's not like when I read the H.P. Lovecraft book where you know what, like how this is going to end in the first paragraph and then we go back and tell the story of how we got there kind of thing. So I do want to try to read this one today as well, especially since I didn't read it all yesterday. But I also have some other things I need to get to today as well. So hopefully I will be back shortly-ish. I'm fucking over this book. I am ready to DNF it. Oh my god. Can you guess what rating I give this fucking last short story? A fucking 1. This is straight up boring. I don't think I'm a fan of Henry James's writing. I really want to DNF this right now, but since I'm doing this video, I am going to try and keep going. But there might be a point where I straight up DNF this, like seriously, because this is now 3 stories I've read, technically 4 if you count Turn of the Screw, and none of them have been higher than 3. That's just, like, I just can't. Like, also, can we get a fucking paragraph here? Like, everything is just a wall of text. It is insane. And, like, this one in particular, I really had a hard time understanding in some areas. Like, it's just almost like a stream of consciousness, even though that's not how it is. It's just weird. I don't know how to explain it. And the ghost in this was just so fucking pointless. He literally did nothing. He was just there. That was it. Nothing else. So this one is about this mother, daughter, and a suitor of hers. The mom always sees this male ghost around her daughter. And when the guy falls in love with the daughter, he can see it too. And the mom's like, holy fuck, you can see him. And that's about it. Like, there's really nothing more to it than that. The ghost does absolutely nothing. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't look at anyone. He doesn't move anything. He's just there. That's it. And like, at the end, he goes away. Ooh, so spooky. Like, there's absolutely nothing scary about this. There's absolutely no tension. There is just fucking nothing here that is likable. And like, also, out of the 3 stories, 2 of them have mentioned a woman dying in childbirth, and it's just like, fucking Christ. And this one in particular, just how it talked about women, briefly mentioning the mentally ill and stuff, I really did not like. So far, this just ain't it. So the next story is called The Private Life. The first sentence is, we talked of London face to face with a great bristling primeval glacier. Okay, whatever the fuck that means. And let's see how long this one is. This one is 30 pages long. And I'll have to look up the year, so I'll have to say that next time if I remember. But, oh my god. I'm definitely not reading this one today. And, like, we are so busy the rest of the week, I'm not sure how my reading for this weekend is going to look for this. Because starting tomorrow, we get super busy. Like, tomorrow we both have a hair appointment. Friday is the Floating Markets of the Southwest, which is right across the river from Notre Dame. It is like our favorite annual market here because it's all stuff from where Thomas is from in the southwest of France. And they also give out a lot of free shit. Like, we always get free garlic, grapes, and apples and stuff. So that's one of our favorite events of the year. Then this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, is European Heritage Days, where a lot of places are open for free, and places that aren't usually open to the public at all are opened up, like Hotel de Ville, the Champs-Élysées Palace, the Senate, like places like that. And I originally had planned we would do stuff both days, but there's also a Magic the Gathering event happening this weekend. It's like a Grand Prix. They're not called that anymore, though, and they're done by this other company called Legacy. And I guess they're not as good as they used to be, and they aren't like as well organized and stuff. That's also happening this weekend, so we're thinking of checking that out on Sunday. And then Monday is Thoma's birthday. So just so much happening. So not sure when I'm gonna get around to this, but ooh, my desire to read this is pretty much negative at the moment. So I'm hoping if I take a day off from reading this, or just kind of read the next one slowly since it's 30 pages, maybe that'll help. I don't know, but I feel like this next story is gonna be make it or break it for me DNFing this. So hopefully it can at least be a freaking 3. Oh, you rolled on my foot. So I am all ready to go get my hair cut. I have to leave in about 40 minutes. Toma has already gone and come back from his, and this is my hair right now. It is way too long. This is all that it looks like. Don't really need to see the back. So hopefully it is going to be quite a bit shorter. I want like that much taken off when I get back. And I'm home and I'm sweaty because it was really fucking hot in there and on the metro. But look how short my hair is now. I didn't have them style it or anything, so that's why it just looks like really normal. But yeah, I can feel the wind on the back of my neck, and so that feels absolutely amazing. I am just glad that it is off my shoulders. It's really short. Oh god, yeah, it feels funny like going to grab my hair and there's just nothing there. Also, like he even agreed, like he even pointed it out. I mean, that's like the coloring now, like the yellow part is gone, so it looks better than it did before as well. And I haven't read shit today, so I'll either be back today, tomorrow, or whenever I get around to it. Well, I'm ready to throw this into the bin. I finished The Private Life, I think it's called, last night. I don't even know how the hell to describe this thing, but I feel like his writing style is getting worse and worse. Like, this one is the first one where it's very noticeable for him to like have a million commas or semicolons, or I don't know what the fuck it's called, I can't think of it right now, but where it's like a line and then something is written and then another line, like straight line kind of thing. I can't even think of what that is, but like it just can't be a normal fucking sentence. There has to be something weird going on with it. So this story, 2 stars yet again, and I have just lost all faith in this. Like, I cannot look at this without disgust now, because I feel like none of these ghost stories are really ghost stories. Like, they're so minimal when it comes to the actual ghosts, and like there is no tension. There's nothing spooky happening. I love ghost stories for the spook factor, and that's just not here at all. Like, I was really looking forward to this. Like, you were supposed to be good, and I don't understand how he can be such a popular writer. I just can't. This is garbage to me. And I hate it so much. Like, I feel like I'm being nice by giving these 2 stars. So yet again, we have a story where it's like, was that even ghosts? Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? And it also ends very abruptly, and so you have no answers. But pretty much it's talking about like this group of like elites, and they're all at like this get together kind of thing around like mountains and whatever. And one of them, oh, here comes Torti, thinks that one of the others has like a double. Like, when he was supposed to be downstairs, he went into the guy's room and saw like another version of him. And then there's this woman who thinks that one of them, she describes it as like isn't whole. And basically, like, if the guy isn't around other people, he isn't there kind of thing. Like, it was quite strange, and I really didn't understand it the first time she was trying to explain it at all. But also, it takes so much time for anything to happen, which in a short story, to me, is a death sentence. Because who cares? Like, with something so short, you have to grab the audience's attention pretty quickly. Otherwise, there's just no reason to be reading it at all. This just was going on about the different people and how, like, usually people have to book them 6 weeks in advance, but since they all know each other and are, like, coming together on their own, they didn't have to do that. And it's like, why do I care? I really do not fucking care. And just everything this story was talking about was boring. And it literally just ends with them all just going home, and it's like, all right, I guess that's it. That was fucking worthless. So what I'm gonna do, instead of DNFing it right now, I'm gonna read the shortest story that is left. It's only 12 pages, and it's called The Real Right Thing. So I am gonna read that. And if this cannot be like a 3 or higher, like if this is still garbage, then I think I'm gonna have to be done, because I cannot force myself to read these. So this one was written in 1899, I believe it was. And the first sentence is, when after the death of Ashton Doyle, but 3 months after. And there it is in this first fucking sentence. The dashes, I think that's what they're called. Gosh, my brain just can't work right now. Okay, but 3 months after, George Withermore was approached, as the phrase is, on the subject of a volume. The communication came straight from his publishers, who had been, and indeed much more, Doyne's own, but he was not surprised to learn, on the occurrence of the interview, they next suggested that a certain pressure as to the early issue of a Life had been applied to them by their late client's widow. That is one sentence. That is one fucking sentence. There are so many commas in this. Like, what the fuck? There's dashes, there's commas, there's a semicolon. What is happening? Like, this is how he's writing now. Like, I was not expecting the first sentence of this to be a good example of what I'm bitching about. How is that interesting? How does that engage people? How do people read this and go, yes, this is like the greatest English writer of our time? Like, I just can't. So even after that horrible, horrible first sentence, I'm going to attempt to read this, and I guess that'll kind of bring me to my verdict of, am I going to DNF this or not? And I have a feeling the answer is going to be yes. Well, I can safely say I don't like Henry James's stories. This one is also a 2. I'm basically doing what the people in this last story do. I give up. This is really weird for me to do in a reading vlog, because I feel like usually you have to commit to reading the whole thing and not DNF it, but like, I've read most of the stories in here, so I think I know how the rest are gonna go kind of deal. But pretty much the story was about this biographer, and he is going to write this biography on this woman's late husband, and as he's like, I think they were all friends though, like they all knew each other previously. While he's like going through the husband's things, he feels his presence there, and he finds it like comforting at first, but then they kind of realize it might not be a good thing. And I was really confused in the beginning by this, because I didn't realize what the hell they were doing. Like, after I read it, I had to read that first paragraph again to really understand what the fuck was going on. And this one could have been good, but once again, there just was no tension. The way they talk to each other is just strange. And the most interesting thing that happens is like off screen. Like, it's not described to us at all. And it's just disappointing in the end. So I am officially going to DNF this book. I'm gonna put it in my pile of books to get rid of, because yeah, I see no reason to hold on to this. I don't recommend this to anyone either. I really don't know what type of horror fan would be into this, except maybe if you're an 1800s ghost yourself, maybe. I just feel like the title of this is almost a bamboozle. Like, these are barely ghost stories. And some of them you would really have to argue them and have a hard time doing that's what they are. Basically, I'm just really confused at how this is turning out. This entire story, by the way, was written like that first sentence I read to you, so there are just commas everywhere. So as much as it pains me to, I'm gonna stop here. Like, I feel like I've said all I need to say about this. Like, this just needs to not exist. I just can't. And more power to you if you do enjoy these stories. I'm sorry I don't have the same opinion as you. I just absolutely cannot with these. But as always, thank you for hanging out with me, even though this turned out completely different than I was expecting, and I've never DNF'd a book in a reading vlog before. And until next time, which hopefully goes better than this, bonne journée and au revoir.